Close your eyes and imagine a battlefield unlike any other. No forests, no cities, no shelter, only endless sand, burning sun, freezing nights, and armies fighting in one of the harshest environments on Earth. This is North Africa during World War II. A war fought across deserts stretching hundreds of miles. A war where heat, thirst, and distance were just as deadly as bullets. This is the story of the North Africa Campaign, the desert war that shaped the course of World War II. At first glance, North Africa didn't seem important. Vast deserts, small towns, few resources, but strategically, it was one of the most critical regions of the war. Whoever controlled North Africa controlled the Suez Canal, major Mediterranean supply routes, access to Middle Eastern oil, the gateway between Europe, Africa, and Asia. For Britain, losing North Africa would cut off its empire. For Germany and Italy, winning there could cripple the Allies. The desert would decide far more than anyone expected. The fighting began in 1940. Italy, under Benito Mussolini, launched an invasion from Libya into British-controlled Egypt. The goal was simple: capture the Suez Canal and push Britain out of the Mediterranean. But the Italian army was poorly equipped and unprepared. British forces counterattacked quickly, pushing the Italians back hundreds of miles across the desert. It was an early Allied victory, but it didn't last. In early 1941, Germany intervened. Adolf Hitler sent one of his most talented commanders to North Africa, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Rommel arrived with elite German units known as the Afrika Korps. Fast, well-trained, highly disciplined, Rommel believed in speed, surprise, and aggressive attacks. He didn't wait for full supplies or reinforcements. He attacked immediately. Within weeks, German and Italian forces pushed the British back across the desert. Rommel earned a nickname that would follow him forever: the Desert Fox. For soldiers on both sides, desert warfare was brutal. The heat during the day reached unbearable levels. At night, temperatures dropped suddenly. Sand was everywhere. Inside rifles, inside food, inside clothing, inside eyes and lungs. Vehicles broke down constantly. Engines overheated. Tracks snapped. Tires melted. Water became the most precious resource. Some soldiers survived on a single canteen per day. Thirst drove men to drink radiator water, even knowing it could kill them. The desert didn't care who you were fighting for. North Africa became the battlefield of tanks. Wide open spaces allowed massive armored maneuvers. British tanks, German panzer divisions, Italian armor. Battles stretched across miles of open desert. Tank crews fought, blinded by sand, deafened by explosions, sweating in metal coffins under the sun. Victory depended on logistics: fuel, ammunition, spare parts. A tank without fuel in the desert was a death trap. More than bullets, the desert war was about supply lines. Every gallon of fuel, every bullet, every drop of water had to travel hundreds of miles by truck, ship, or plane. British supply lines stretched from Egypt. Axis supply lines crossed the Mediterranean from Italy. Allied aircraft and submarines attacked Axis supply convoys relentlessly. Rommel often fought with half the fuel and ammunition he needed. Many of his victories came despite shortages. But shortages eventually caught up with him. By mid-1942, Rommel pushed deep into Egypt. His forces stood just miles from the Nile. Britain was desperate. Then came El Alamein. Under General Bernard Montgomery, British forces regrouped, reinforced, and prepared carefully. This time, they waited. On October 23, 1942, the Allies launched a massive attack. Thousands of guns opened fire. Tanks rolled forward in waves. Aircraft dominated the skies. After days of brutal fighting, Rommel was forced to retreat. Montgomery famously said, "Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, we never had a defeat." El Alamein marked the beginning of the end for Axis forces in North Africa. In November 1942, American forces entered the North African Campaign. Operation Torch began with landings in Morocco and Algeria. For many U.S. soldiers, it was their first combat experience. They were inexperienced, but determined. Early battles were difficult. At Kasserine Pass, German forces inflicted heavy losses on American troops. But the Americans learned quickly. Leadership improved. Coordination improved. Confidence grew. The U.S. Army was becoming a modern fighting force. Behind the movements of armies were human lives. Soldiers suffered from dehydration, heat exhaustion, dysentery, malaria, sand blindness, psychological stress. Medics worked in impossible conditions. Wounded men baked in the sun. Bandages stuck to skin. Morphine supplies ran low. Graves were dug in sand that shifted with the wind. The desert swallowed the dead quietly. By early 1943, Axis forces were trapped in Tunisia. They were outnumbered, outsupplied, outgunned. Allied forces closed in from east and west. In May 1943, over 250,000 Axis soldiers surrendered. It was one of the largest surrenders of the war. North Africa was secured. The Allies now had a base to invade southern Europe. The North Africa Campaign changed the war. It removed Axis control from Africa, secured the Mediterranean, trained Allied armies for future invasions, weakened Germany and Italy, paved the way for Sicily and Italy. It turned inexperienced troops into hardened veterans. Lessons learned in the desert would later be used in Normandy. Today, the desert looks peaceful again. Sand covers old battlefields. Wrecks rust beneath the sun. Footprints fade with the wind. But beneath that silence lies history. The North Africa Campaign proved that wars aren't only won in cities or forests. Sometimes they are decided in places where survival itself is a battle, where men fought not just an enemy, but the environment itself, and where courage was tested under the harshest sun on earth. The Desert War was not glamorous. It was not clean. It was exhausting, brutal, and unforgiving. But it shaped the Allied victory. It forged commanders. It trained armies. It broke the Axis momentum. The sands of North Africa hold countless stories of sacrifice, endurance, and determination. Stories that deserve to be remembered.